Today we are going to learn a lot about being a father, and not any kind of father. It's a special kind, a separate kind of father. And we'll learn these strategies on how to cope with that and build a strong relationship. Chris, could you please introduce yourself and why did you write this book?
Okay, well, my name is Christopher Merrifield. I'm from Southampton, England. As you know from my from our other meeting, that I've written about obviously stress and burnout, but also this was written many years before that. So I just been divorced, and I ended up encountering problems where I was being denied my parental rights, and so I ended up in this really deep legal battle, and obviously it's an emotional battle and a financial battle as well. So I wrote a book about it. I wanted to share and help some other fathers out there who may be feeling a bit distressed.
But what is the name of the book?
The name is The Separated Father.
Great. Could you explain a little more why did you write this book?
Okay, when I wrote this book, I was documenting what I was going through personally. And being a teacher, I had obviously a lot of insight of how to intensify my time, turn my time into quality experiences with very little access, and also how to do things when you have very little funds and you are under pressure all the time. And the main pressure really is that you don't want to lose that connection with your children. So thus, I thought, there's a lot of other fathers out there. I spoke to many charities who help single fathers who are going through this kind of problem. And I thought to myself, you know what, I can see that there's a real need for this help, because when you go online, you're flooded with material about mothers, single moms, blah, 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 blah. Very little for the dads out there. So I thought I'd add something from my own personal experience and how I coped with it.
And where was the hardest point in this experience?
Okay, the hardest point of this experience was in the beginning, in the UK anyway, but because of the history, they kind of assume the father isn't playing along. And so you have very limited access in public areas. And so that was really the tough time, because I thought, how can I, I'm in a public place, there's lots of people around me, we don't have our creature comforts, we don't have our own toys or anything. And my child at the time, she was only 1. So I was thinking, how am I going to make that really close connection when it's basically open and everyone's watching us and we can't have our little bonding sessions the way that we played like we had before.
And how did you feel when you had to fight for your child? How did you really fight for your child? What happened?
Well, what happened was is that I was told I have no rights, and the mother said, "Hey, I have all the rights here. You have nothing. The mums always win, so just deal with it." And in my mind, I thought, no, there's no way I'm going to just accept that. So during this tough time, I stayed motivated, and what I actually did is I thought, I need to think about how am I going to make this interaction really intense and really meaningful. So I went home and I actually planned it using some research and my knowledge as a teacher to think about, I want to do things that create experiences, create learning, and we can share many different things and keep developing that understanding that you have anyway with a child, and let it continue to be as natural as possible. And it was tough because obviously that you have the mother who's at war with you there watching you at the same time. So there's kind of like, it feels like all the cameras are on you, everyone's watching you. But that's how I managed to do it. So I made it very deliberate in what I was doing.
And what is the stance of the father in the UK law?
The stance of the father of the UK law, funny enough, is there are 2 main things. If you are on the birth certificate, it's great because you can prove that you are the parent of that child. And also, if you've been married, that also gives you some help. But what you really need to do is make sure that you show you're being responsible. So anything you buy, like if you buy clothes, if you buy some sweets, if you buy some, it's really good to document that just to prove that you are contributing, you're adding to those experiences, and you are spending time. And any kind of contacts you make or attempts to make, because obviously in the time I've been denied a lot of it, you need to make sure that you keep a record of that to show that I haven't run away from my child, I'm running towards my child. So once you start proving that, funny enough, things start to change because the attitude changes from suspicious, and they do take their time, they want to watch what you're doing, and then it starts to change towards, actually, you're a good guy, you're one of the fathers in this world who actually is a good one, we're not chasing you, you have come to the child. And that makes a big difference.
And how you have coped with the challenges with this responsibility, like the limit of time, the strain, the stress?
Okay, well, there are some things. One thing I did do to start with is I thought, well, what do I want to get of the time with my child? So I planned that certain toys, certain different textures. I looked at certain charity shops, um, kind of looked for which toy companies were having price wars because they do at certain times in the year, say like Easter, now coming up for Christmas. You have one big company, one big children's toy company here is Fisher Price. If they start cutting their prices, then everyone else, like newbie in that, is going to start following because they think, hang on, they're 70% off. We need to be following. So this is a time when parents can really get the best quality of things and not too expensive. The same goes with clothes. At the moment, recently, Bowden was having a sale. They knocked, I think, 70% off. So again, another high-end brand. And it's because of those kind of different times in the year, you can start seeing that one's going to do it, they're all going to start following. So it's a good time. So this can save your finances. There's also charity shops. And there's also, which I found is brilliant even now with my child, is if you have cardboard boxes, you've got old bottles you're not using, maybe you can bring them with you, get some glue, and so you start making your own toys. And of course, that's adding to that quality experience that you and your child are building your own little world. It's just between you two. And of course, it makes that bond much stronger. And you start to develop your own little language. So it's really, really useful.
Was it easy to build that bond, especially the time you are allowed to see your child was limited?
In the beginning, it was challenging because, as I said, it felt very unnatural. The place that we used to meet was in a library, so there are other parents and other things around us, and it was, as I said, it just feels like everyone's eyes are on you, and it's very hard to tell your child that this is you're only going to get this little slot with daddy every week, and so. As I said, what you do is you try and mix in as much as possible. So what I thought is that there must be some education, there must be some co-creating. And there's an idea called shared spaces or third spaces. And third spaces are used a lot in education and psychology. And what they are is when you build up your own little world. So like I said, like bring in those cardboard boxes, those bottles, and we create our own games, our own meaning, our own characters, and start playing these things. And we've developed our own understanding. It's like a third space. It's not her space. It's not my space. It's a shared space where we co-create the meaning and what's inside it. And once you make this little bubble, like when between children, they meet and they have their own imaginary friends, their own experiences that they're sharing, and the way they think, the way they talk, and you can develop that with your child. So your bond becomes really solid because you've made your own world. And the longer it goes on, the more you introduce like stories and food and other things, your world is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so does the meaning. And so what you've created together. So your child then is owning this space. It's theirs. It's not just something that's brought in from the outside, and no one else can share that meaning that you've made together.
Yeah, that is great. And where do you think the main mistakes of fathers?
Okay, the main mistakes of fathers are the first and most common one is to mess up the forms. And messing up the forms is sadly part of it because of the language. So what you got to do is think very clearly about what do I want to get out of this? And you need to push aside and separate everything that's in your mind. So contact with your child is one specific thing. And money is another specific thing. Being angry with your ex or upset, that's another thing, and your emotions are another thing. And you really need to cut these into small pieces and say, okay, right now, if it's going to go to court, I got to focus on contact time and protecting what I've got. Once you do that, writing the form, making the lists of what you want becomes easy. And the other big mistake of fathers is giving up because there's so much literature out there, and what you usually hear is that, well, mothers always win. And this just isn't true. Unfortunately, a lot of fathers give up and run away because of the history. And the history is this. Everywhere in the world, the history is a woman gets pregnant, the father runs away, and the government is chasing the father for him to pay his maintenance and be responsible. And we all know that goes right back to the beginning of history. There's a lot of that happening. So the law obviously takes from the history, and they will watch you, and they will watch you very carefully. So do what you need to do. The one thing that makes you very sore is you think I'm paying child maintenance. My finances are being drained to pay, but the law sees it as that's not your money. And you've got to get it in your head that this is not my money. This is my money that goes to my child. And you can untie your resentment and your bad feeling about you're giving money to your ex. You're actually giving money to your child. And as long as you do that, and make sure do it by bank to bank transfer, so you keep that nice paper trail. And what they'll see over time is that actually, if you paid your maintenance, but you were buying toys and some food and some clothes as well, actually you're providing quite a lot. There's nothing, you're not doing the minimum, you're doing more than the minimum. And you've started creating these toys, so you take pictures, pay attention to the cartoons they like, and then it starts to be that actually you're building this world with your child. And we are seeing now over time, because we've been watching you, recording you, and you've got to keep your own little log about the times you turned up, what you did, how they felt when you left. Keep all these things. We've got cameras now on our mobile phones, take lots of pictures, that you actually have this history. And then the law will say, well, actually, yeah, you're a good guy. You're actually one of the really good fathers, and you can prove that.
Can fathers win?
Yes, they definitely can win. And I can say that as a person that without a load of resources, I had a terrible job at the time. I was working, I didn't like this job, so I was already stressed about my job. I was working, looking after severely autistic people in a care home, and I was doing 12-hour shifts. And we used to do so many days on, so many days off. And my days off, I used to look after my child. It didn't pay well. Obviously, sometimes you can be physically attacked during that time, and the long hours, and then plus I had this other stress about going through court. So yeah, the father definitely can win, but you have to stay consistent, and you've got to stay cool. Because anything, if you start swearing, you get upset. I made the mistake of I did confide in a friend, and when you have a close friend that you trust, you kind of offload how you feel that day, that things are making you stressed, and you might feel like, oh, I really want to get this person. You may say some words that you really wouldn't say in public or to your parents. And this friend betrayed me. So I would say be very, very careful who you confide in, because the person I considered my friend at the time completely misread it, and they told the other party. So I then had to struggle against that. Luckily, it wasn't so bad, and I kept my cool afterwards. And I just explained, at the time, I have frustration. Of course, I'm stressed. I'm going to court. A normal person for a normal thing like a parking ticket would be stressed if they go into court. We're not all lawyers. And you just explain that I'm human. Of course, I get upset. I didn't mean anything by it. So just remember to be careful who you confide in, and certainly keep your cool and stay logical.
Why then is it always thought that mothers win?
The reason is that firstly, the law makes it hard as a father. And that's because of that history where they want to really see and check out, are you as good as you say you are? Because sadly, most of the history is that a lot of the men have not been. Another thing is that if you have your rights infringed, you have to bring it to the court to sue them. So you have to take on the financial burden of doing that. And also, all the eyes are on you. They're going to check your history. They're going to check your legal history, your background, and everything. They're going to go deep into you. So you have to be ready for that. But keep in your mind, if you fight for 3 years, your child's going to live maybe to 70, 80. It's worth it. So for everything you invest, just don't give in. And the other reason why it's hard is the general myth out there is that women always win. And it is true that it is because a lot of men give up. It's also because when you look around, there are not so many charities or pages or books on support as a father, especially to do with the legal side. And the other thing is that to try and pay for lawyers and go to court and all that, it's very, very, very expensive. So what you need to do is you need to really stick your heels in, don't give up, and say, this is something I'm going to do. And you've got to have it in your mind. Personally, in my mind, I thought, if I'm going to have to fight this for 16 years, and 16 is the legal age where someone can live wherever they like in the UK, then I will fight for 16 years, because I'm fighting for my child. And that is something that I will never give in to. So you need to keep that in your mind. You've got to stay strong.
And how would you stay strong? How would you maintain this kind of motivation?
Maintaining this motivation really comes down to if I use my 3 M's, because that was also part of when I started formulating it. First thing is get a concept of who you are in this situation. So you are a good father who has now been accused of something, accused of being a bad father. That's why they're trying to take your parental rights away. But on the other side, keep the concept of who you are on paper. So those documents say you are the natural father. There is no documents to say that you're a bad guy. So you're just going to have to wait out, let the courts do its thing, go through the process. And also keep the concept of who you are in your child's mind and who you are to them. And your child looks at you and they think you're wonderful. They just think, this, you know, you're amazing. You know all these things, you do all this stuff. And you got to keep up, you got to keep that going. And remember that every child, your child certainly deserves to have that fantasy about their father when they're young. And it goes the other way. You look at them, you think they're amazing. There's nothing more beautiful, nothing more precious. And so if you're fighting for that, that should be your meaning and keeps you driven. And also use that as your standard for every other part of your life. So when you think, you know, I'm going to give up my car because it's too expensive and I'm just going to take the bus. And then you need to have a purpose. What's the purpose? I'm putting funding aside for my child. Why am I not going out for a beer this weekend? I'm putting it aside because I want to buy my child a present. And just keep that as your main focal point for every hardship you go through. And when you go and relax, because you will need to relax at some point, you say, I'm going to relax at the minimum time, and you know how long you need. You might need to take a day out every 2 weeks or something like that. But say, once I've done this, I'm going to be back on focus because I know exactly where I'm going, what my meaning is right now. And you should keep that in your mind, and that will be your focus. It will help you recover better. And for me, usually I have lots of things bouncing around my head, because you will do have lots of emotions, actions, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they will be very rude to you, very abusive. They will sometimes just try some very passive aggressive methods, like just be a little bit late, or keep a record of, oh, you know, one day you were 20 minutes late, 30 minutes late. And let's remember, if you are 30 minutes late, it's not that serious. They will try and maybe try to make it very serious, but it's not, because 30 minutes late could be a traffic jam. It could be a child could take that long to just get ready. It could be the bus broke down. You know, there's so many standard things. So, and as long as you inform them, because take it in normal context, say you're taking your child to school, just, hey, I'm going to be 30 minutes late because the bus is broken down. You know, it's not big news unless it continues to happen, in which case you've got to change your plans. So don't get sucked into any kind of emotional conflict. Just leave it, be logical. And I found the best way to deal with someone who's being abusive to you is just ignore them. If someone is going to get angry with you, they're going to do something, and you can feel the anger is rising, just say, hang on, I know I'm getting annoyed. I'm going to leave it for an hour and come back when my head is cool. So put in those breaks for yourself, because you don't want there to be any kind of record about you being, you know, aggressive or annoyed. And you certainly don't want to make it worse for yourself or carry that feeling around. So just let it go. Give yourself a cooling off period.
Yeah, it has been so helpful, so great talking to you, Christopher, about these great experiences. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak about what I have experienced, because usually I'm talking about my other works, and it's nice to really talk with my experience as a father. So thank you.
Yeah, great.